Oh, and in 30 minutes, I have a student interview. I'm going to call somebody, and we're going to talk. That's what's going to happen, okay? So in 30 minutes, student interview. Maybe after the student interview, we can do a TTS stream. Maybe. But we'll have to see. You got blown the fuck out.
Hello?
Howdy.
How you doing?
Doing great. How about you?
Good, really good. Awesome. All right.
Is it awesome? Does me dying over and over and again in a video game bring you that much joy?
I enjoyed it personally.
Great. All right, hit me up. Also, tell everyone who the fuck you are.
Of course, of course. So my name's Robbie. I'm a first-year aerospace engineer at Cal Poly. So not really politics is like my strong suit, but doing an English paper right now. And I have to write it on somebody who's like influential to me. And I have to pick it on like a specific topic. So I chose like how you're able to keep your long-term goals in mind is what I'm trying to focus on. Mm-hmm. And I've noticed like you're really good at this, especially because you've grown so fast and that's been your goal. So I started watching you like 6 months ago, became more involved, and yeah, that's about it.
Nice. All right, well, hit me up. I am pliable clay, ready to be molded by you.
All right, awesome. All right, so in like a short description for those like may not know you, just because I have to like get some quotes, what would you say your job is?
Yeah, well, my job, if it could be considered that, is to live stream and produce video content, mostly on YouTube, on political current events. So mostly I cover things that are currently happening or topics of broad political interest, and I give my own spin on it, and I record them in a live setting, and then afterwards I edit down those live recordings and release them as videos.
And die a lot on video game streams, of course.
Of course, yeah. Unless I'm playing Fall Guys, in which I am world-ranked NA champion of Fall Guys. So, of course, in that game, I'm actually quite proficient.
Of course. Awesome. And then, so what originally got you into politics?
I've always liked arguing, and people who like arguing tend to think they're good at debating. That is very, very, very often not the case, but it's a mistake people tend to make. And because I got into debating kind of as a concept or as an aesthetic, as an exercise in expressing intellectual superiority, I invariably came up, to confront certain subjects that I wasn't that familiar with, mostly political ones, of which I remained largely ignorant until I started to get more invested in learning about them when I had a phenomenal AP comparative government professor back in my senior year of high school, Professor Hinojosa at Beverly High, repping out the real ones. And listening to him, I mean, the way he would describe the differences between world governments, the inherent ambiguity of human organization, it was so complex and interesting that I decided pretty much right there to move away from my previous interest in the hard sciences and to get into political science when I went to university, which I switched over to sociology shortly thereafter, just for a variety of reasons, and I don't regret that decision at all. And yeah, since then I've just really, really liked politics. Now I get to make money off it. Pretty great.
Do you think that, like, did you have a specific goal in mind when you first started getting into politics, like what you wanted to do to help the cause, I guess?
Well, for most people, you don't really get that much of an opportunity to do stuff with politics. It's unfortunate, but it's just a reality of the world. Most people who are interested in politics are just observers, and there's nothing wrong with that. That will always be the case. But I didn't want that. When I got a degree in sociology, what I was hoping for was was to act as a statistical analyst for a non-government organization. It's a really important job. All of these organizations that work at a state and city level, they need good data collection to be able to do what they do. I was pretty good at statistics back when I was in uni, so I thought I could do that. After I graduated, I was unemployed for a time. The job market in the area I was in was really, really, really bad. And I just couldn't find work. And I thought, I've got some spare time. I have a little bit of clout in a pre-existing online community. So a fan of Destiny's bought me a microphone pro bono. And I decided to use it to do some voiceovers and some very basic video editing. And after that, somebody gave me money for a webcam, and it all kind of spiraled out from there.
Nice, awesome. All right, well, what are your opinions on politics aren't meant for the dinner table, so to say? So, like, do you talk politics with your family? I know you've mentioned that before a little bit, but if you could go elaborate a little bit more on that.
No, it's a fucking idiotic statement. Politics are meant for every walk of life. Politics aren't meant for the dinner table is the kind of idiotic, placid sentiment expressed by people who have nothing to gain from changing the current social order. It's the sort of stuff that you see expressed by suburban housewives because they don't want to make a fuss while their idiot uncle is over to, who they know would have happily participated in the fucking Shoah to keep from, bridging any antagonism with them. It's an idiotic idea. Politics affects all of us. It comes right down to the dinner table. The food on your plate often is indicative of your class privilege and status. To avoid discussing these subjects is at best to maintain ignorance and at worst an active shield to prevent children from understanding the nature of the world they live in. It's not good.
Do you think possibly there could be too much talk about politics?
You can talk about anything too much. Sure, yeah, for sure. You can be fucking obnoxious on any topic. There's no denying that. But you can talk about politics without being obnoxious, even if you're a radical. There's nothing inherently exclusionary about radical politics. That's one of the issues that I have, again, with this, no politics at the dinner table sort of thing. The implicit suggestion that a given set of political positions is so ostracizing that it shouldn't be expressed in public. I don't necessarily think that's true unless those political opinions would be unacceptable in any environment, So, for example, if you're like a neo-Nazi, that's not a don't say it at the dinner table sort of thing. That's a you should never be able to express that anywhere in public ever for your own safety sort of issue. And that's the way it should be.
The one example, like I'm thinking of, like I completely agree with that too. But like there's a couple of people like that I've met that whenever you mention like you're into politics or like you're involved and you're a political activist, they seem to like kind of like get turned off by that idea. Do you think that it could have a negative effect by openly talking about it too much to those people who aren't so inclined to the idea of politics?
Yeah, I mean, if people are personally averse to having like deep discussions on politics, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, we all have our own interests. There are times when I don't really necessarily want to talk politics. They're infrequent, but they happen. But I don't generally think that no politics at the dinner table sentiment is about preserving the attitudes of people who just don't want to, who are just not feeling it that day or who don't have an interest. And it's more about maintaining a sort of collective class disinterest. If a person doesn't want to talk about politics, that's totally fine. But if a person is using their disinterest in politics as a tool to prevent you from challenging their odious positions, I think that's not only bad, it's also pretty pathetic on their part.
Of course, that blissful ignorance, I like to say,
yeah. Or malicious ignorance, which is also very much a thing.
That too, yes. Switching topics a little bit. How much planning goes on to your streams and your segments?
Absolutely none.
None?
No, none. One of the biggest jokes that I thought the left had kind of bought into was the idea that to make good political content, you have to like script it and plan out a video essay. I think that's bullshit. Listen, video essays are great. I like watching them. They're fun. They're informative. But first of all, politics really isn't that hard. Most of the political issues in this country, most of the discourse, isn't centered around two ideas of equal merit being discussed to the finer points of their data. Most of the issues that are being discussed are one person believes in reality, the other person doesn't. My debates, when I have people on here, aren't difficult conversations. They're difficult because of the people I'm talking to. Conservatives are idiots. You shouldn't need preparation to be able to debunk their arguments. So I don't. The only times you should really need to prepare is if there's data ahead of time that you need to collect, not like a position or morally that you need to sort of work out in your head. But even that, like, most of this is pretty easy to get on the fly. Like, you have to be really willfully ignorant of reality to be a conservative. So I say, we can put effort in if we want, but don't give people the illusion that you need to come off with a better argument.
When you're doing your YouTube segments, when you talk about current events, are there some that you don't talk about for a specific reason or some that you prioritize otherwise? I mean, obviously there are some, like the debate that happened. Obviously you're going to talk about that, but are there other ones that maybe not as important that you may decide that you should focus on more or not? Or
I try to talk about what's important. Some issues I'm more aware of than others. For example, when it comes to foreign policy, there's obviously a ton of really interesting stuff going on all the time, but foreign policy is genuinely quite difficult to get into, in large part because as an American, you're insulated from the consequences of American imperialism around the world. You know, you're not taught that sort of stuff. It's deliberate. It's not a gap in your knowledge that just sort of incidentally happened to be there. It's more they know it's easier to maintain the system as it exists if people in America know as little as possible about what the consequences of our regime changes and sanctions are. That stuff I'm a little bit more trepidatious about just because there's a higher knowledge gap. Apart from that, though, I try to be pretty forthcoming about info. There are some debates that I won't have because they get really, really boring. Abortion debates, for example, can get pretty... It's just a matter of you're never going to convince a person to believe that abortion's okay in one debate. You know, people aren't that receptive. It's a very emotionally laden topic. Veganism, people have similar feelings, that sort of stuff. But when it comes to the actual events, I try to be pretty forthcoming.
Awesome. What are some of the long-term goals you have for your channel, and then also just as a political commentator, like in life as general with politics?
Oh, I mean, well, for my channel, I want to be the largest YouTuber ever, obviously. I don't think I dislike the lack of ambition amongst a lot of lefties. I think it's a little irritating and a little bit short-sighted. There are a lot of lefties online who seem to just want to have like a cute little community, but every right-winger who has their own political community online, like they want to build like an empire. They can stand upon while they watch you all get sent to the gas chambers. The megalomaniacal tendencies associated with the right do benefit them in the sense that it leads to every one of their political operatives being a potential massive threat, you know? Because they don't like just stop with having a cutesy Discord server and a bunch of nice emotes that you can get if you donate and subscribe. They go way higher than that. And I want to go higher than that. There are no limits to my ambition. I want to be as large as possible.
No, yeah, I think that shows a lot about, like it's shown in practice with you too. You have a tight community within your channel too. You don't you don't pretend like you're above all of them. Yeah, so I can.
No, I just say it outright.
Yeah, exactly. Do you think you're going to keep the same format? Like, let's say your channel just completely skyrockets. I mean, you already have. But do you think you'll continue to keep the same interactive, personal connection with the chat as your channel changes or as your channel grows? Or do you think you're going to have to switch it around a little bit just because pure numbers, you're not going to be able to have that connection with the people? Where do you see that happening if your channel were to hopefully get bigger and bigger?
No, I really like my format as it is. Maximizing my enjoyment for streaming is essential to making sure I produce good content. If I'm not enjoying what I'm doing, I'm not going to produce good content, and there's not really a point anymore. Obviously, the larger my channel gets, the harder it is to have individual relationships with chatters, but that was always inevitably going to be, an impossibility. Like, for example, but I'm pretty good at reading chat, Back when I had 100 concurrent viewers, I could read and follow chat. After the debate stream 2 nights ago, I had 23,000 viewers. I could still read chat. I would have to grow to an enormous size before it was impossible for me to read chat. The largest reason for that is because I have a separate website, which means the majority of my viewers are going to be on YouTube in the pits, where I don't have to acknowledge their existence, and the people who care enough to be seen by me arrive at my website. So we're already selecting for more dedicated fans. And I like that because it means I'm not cost gating accessibility to me. People who subscribe to my channel or to me, they don't get any higher privileges than anyone else. I just answer questions or respond to things that seem interesting to me in chat. And it's always going to be that way. I'll never change that.
All right, well, okay. What are some of the shorter term goals? I know obviously like relating to the Come Pledge that you have now, you've changed some of your discourse online. Other than that, what are some short-term goals you have?
What I'm really looking for right now is another big GOT. I've been working a little bit on navigating the algorithm a little bit more effectively. There's a science to that, about like choosing your tags, when to release videos, that sort of thing. And I'm getting better. I noticed that over the past 6 months, I've gone from the average video after 24 hours getting about 30,000 views to the average video getting between 60 and 80,000 views, which is a pretty extraordinary jump in that length of time, but we're only just getting started. What I'd also like is a really big get. Something to... The term isn't attract the normies. The term is something to excite a broader discussion. Sometimes what content creators will do, sort of a pretentious term, content creators, but it is what it is. What they'll do is they'll essentially manufacture a PR stunt that extends beyond the reach of their community. This can be them going to a convention and embarrassing themselves. This can be somebody like PewDiePie doing the sub to PewDiePie thing where like everyone in the universe hears about it, even if you don't even watch YouTube for recreational purposes. There are things that you can do to get that kind of broad appeal. Also, going on larger podcasts, Joe Rogan, for example, would be an example of that. What I want is to get a big get like that. If you're smart enough, you can manufacture them, but I'm limited in a number of ways, in large part because my content is political. I don't have like super like normie content that anyone could get behind with like a weird clickbait challenge kind of thing. So it's just something that I have to think about. That's my next big goal.
Do you think that eventually you might hit like a point where you won't, not like necessarily won't be able to grow, but like you'll kind of flatten out just based off of like, just some of the stuff that's happened in the past with your channel, you know, completely agree with like all of it. But like once you get to a specific point, in, you know, popularity, this stuff starts coming up. Do you think it eventually will stop your growth?
If my growth slows, I just think it's going to be a product of algorithmic exposure, not because I've been canceled or because there's drama surrounding me. Drama doesn't really affect people. The drama, like, you have to be arrested for the drama to actually start to affect your channel. Sargon talked about how it's okay to fuck minors and talked about, like, raping an MP candidate, and it didn't affect his growth in the slightest, you know? All the shit that happens with people, all of, like, the main, like, skeptic YouTubers or, like, Jeffree Star or Shane Dawson, all these people, like the consequences don't come to home until you've done something truly heinous. The last little bit of drama that I got into was like I said some comments that could be misconstrued as racist, which I acknowledged and talked about on my channel, with regards to a hopeful Republican congressional candidate, and that clip ended up getting posted and dunked on by Ben Shapiro, Paul Joseph Watson, Count Dankula, Tim Pool, and the congresswoman in question, earning collectively millions of views. It didn't affect my channel in the slightest. At all. Yeah, not even slightly.
I think the people who are watching those videos aren't gonna already have their opinions made up about you anyway. So
exactly, yeah. And the people who watch my content know that I tend to, you know, that I'm generally a provocateur. In a way that I consider defensible. So, and for that reason, and because I think I do a good job explaining my behavior and justifying myself to those who will listen, I'm not worried about, like, my content coming to a halt because I become too controversial to expand. Controversy always helps until it doesn't, and I don't think I'm anywhere near that point.
All right. What strategies have you changed since you've been involved with politics? When you first started, and then especially within the recent months with Trump versus Biden, obviously.
Well, the big one was it's mostly my strategy with regards to dealing with other lefties. That's the issue. Leftists are what's the worst word in the English language? Let me think. The lefties are, at least when it comes to organizational ability, unfathomably incompetent. And for that reason, I find myself endlessly frustrated with their behaviors when it comes to political efficaciousness. Fascists online are incredibly talented at organizing because they're very angry and they have nothing else going on in their lives. You know, some idiot child on 4chan like spam posting about how Ilhan Omar is a degen who deserves to be hanged. This person can get more engagement just spam posting and making multiple accounts on Twitter than a lefty could thinking up the funniest conceivable retort, you know, to a conservative's post over the course of 6 hours. Their fastidiousness works in their favor. You don't have to be smart to win political gambles. You just have to be, you know, tenacious and zealous, mostly. But a lot of lefties, their strategic inclinations, they differ massively. When I first started the channel, I thought I could, like, bully the left into falling behind a collective strategy. Now I realize I don't think the online left is that salvageable. I think it's full of a lot of selfish nihilists who are more interested in being the smartest person sent to the gas chambers. Some of them are woke scolds, who just want to be, like, you know, super woke, like, haha, I never even say dumb to refer to people because that's ableist. And for a while, I thought those were, like, the people who wanted to be the smartest ones sent to the gas chamber. But now I realize there are a bunch of people who call themselves Marxist-Leninists who have never read a fucking word of Lenin, who are like, participating in bourgeois electoralism makes you, makes you a liberal. I'm smart. I'm not doing that. And these people are exactly the same as the woke scolds. They just want to be the purest person sent to the gas chamber. So I don't like the online left that much. There are some cool people. There are some cool communities. Mine. But apart from that, it's pretty much a shit show. I'm going to try to appeal more to liberals in the future. Moving liberals over to leftists' positions is pretty easy if you've got the good arguments. There are more liberals in America than there are lefties by exponential degrees. I think it's much easier to just focus on these people for recruitment. Plus, that way you're doing more of a difference. You know, if you have an audience of lefties who were already lefties, what have you done? Like, what have you actually done to improve the climate of the world? If you have an audience of lefties who were once liberals, you've changed the character of a group of people. That's an actual meaningful difference.
How do you think you're going to change? You've talked about before that if hopefully Biden wins the election, you're going to be changing a lot of your strategies. So you're going to be getting on the soak dems and chat. What specific rhetoric would you be changing compared to now? You don't want to give those woke scolds a reason to not vote for Biden. What would be changing after the fact if Biden wins the election?
Well, the whole digging in on the soak dems thing was a little bit of a joke, because just being mean to people who have generally good interests at heart isn't a very effective way at changing their minds. Barring some very specific circumstances. There are some ways you can make it work, but in this instance, I don't think that's an appropriate response. What I'm more looking to do, though, is substantively critique the Democratic Party from the position of the left. I want to do what Chapo Trap House initially set out to do. That's my goal. Chapo Trap House's initial goal was, after Hillary wins, which is what they expected to happen, they would be the left-leaning podcast that would just dunk on Hillary, and they'd be like the one guy or guys doing that, which is great. That's perfectly fine. Obviously, that's not how reality turned out, but I agree with the sentiment. I think that sentiment is important, and I think that what a lot of people are going to realize after a Biden presidency is that Biden is, we all know he's kind of like a doddering fool, but he's also fundamentally incapable of fixing the problems with this country. Biden, Pelosi, these establishment Democrats really, really do not give a single shit about substantively changing the makeup of this country in any real way. They're just more politicians, power for power's sake. And if I think with a sharp eye, criticizing that can encourage a large liberal audience to realize that they have to turn to something more radical to really win the freedoms they're looking for,
Yeah, with your size right now, how much do you think you could actually impact that audience that you have, and try to grow obviously more to pull in those liberals and show them the light?
I don't want to tempt fate, who knows what life has in store for me. But I've been at this for less than 2 years, and I'm already one of the most influential online leftists. I'm very confident that with my personality, I'm going to be capable of having a massive amount of influence with time. More so than I have now by a large degree. And I look forward to it, tremendously. I don't want to use this in any mean-spirited way. I quite care about the state of this country and the people who live inside of it. I just think, if there is an opportunity to change minds, it must be taken advantage of, or you're ceding that space to people far worse,
Yeah, totally. Do you feel any responsibility for the information that you give out to your audience and what they do with that? For example, some of the clips that you have, like you can be taken out of context. A lot of those clips, that information that gets out there, knowing that it could be taken out of context. Do you feel responsible for that in any way?
Yeah, for sure. I'm responsible for how people interpret my content. That's the responsibility. If I'm going to make a 6-figure salary off making fucking YouTube videos, then there has to be some kind of drawback to that. And the drawback is obviously that my words carry responsibility. I am beholden to the outcomes of what I say. Some of the stuff that I say that gets misinterpreted only serves to get people angry at me, and I don't think that has a negative impact in the world. Like the woke scolds and the transphobia drama, like Vaush is a transphobe, hates non-binary people, or whatever the fuck they say about me. I don't think anything I've said actually motivates people to dislike trans or non-binary people. I mean, I'm pretty fastidiously supportive of these groups, you know. There have been a couple times where I've been concerned about irony poisoning in my audience. Here's an example. Abigail Shapiro, the younger sister of Benny Boy, has done a bit of a YouTube ad run herself, which is hilarious and a disaster and great to make fun of. But while I was covering her video, I noticed that there were people doing the echoes and in the chat, which sometimes they do to make fun of the perceived dog whistling of right-leaning people. Like, for example, if I'm watching a conservative video maker or something like that, and they say, they don't want you to have children. Well, who's they? You know, and then I'll say, who's they, and chat will spam the echoes. And the joke is, we're making fun of the fact that they're dog whistling, you know, the Jewish question. But if you're doing the echo signs just because a Jewish woman is talking, you're doing the thing. You're not making fun of other people dog whistling the thing. You're just doing it yourself. Later, people made comments about her nose. I was shocked. I didn't see it in chat at the time because I get pretty wrapped up in video critiquing when I'm actually looking at the video. But people sent me screenshots afterwards, and I had to get a master list of these people to see how many of them were actually like Nazis. What I found was that most of them weren't. I think a lot of these were just like 15 to 16-year-olds who just think it's like it was just funny, and they just don't understand the context behind what makes it funny, which is how communities die. This is how satire-oriented communities like Gamers Rise Up or Political Compass memes end up turning into shitholes, because what is initially satire turns into a sincere advocacy for terrible ideas. You have to be careful about that. So I've been trying to be better about that. Also, like the femoid thing. Saying femoid is funny because you're making fun of like the sort of reflexive misogyny of online, you know, right-leaning groups saying like, oh, these femoids, they're trying to steal our money, alimony, something like that. It's funny, you know, if done properly. But sometimes there were people in my chat who would just start spamming femoid whenever a person with a feminine voice came on. What if they were non-binary? What if they were a trans man? What if they were what if they just had a feminine voice, you know? At that point, you've circled right around, and you're going back to unironically enforcing the same standards I'm trying to make fun of with the use of that word. I understand that this has been a long answer, but this is something that I've tried to be a little bit more critical of in my streams, and also be more fastidious about calling people out on that. That said, I don't think it's a serious issue in my community, because it's a problem that I recognize, and when I talk about it, chat understands that it's an issue. So, for that reason, I am not too concerned about the future of the community and the irony poisoning.
Yeah, no, I was. That was my next question: is how you feel like how do you hold yourself responsible for that? And I do remember I've actually watched that stream live where with Abigail, and I remember you called them out like the next stream and stuff, and I was like, I mean, not like impressed, like that's what you should do, but like obviously, like yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah, of course, it's just a natural. Keeping track of your community in that respect is very, 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 very important. There's no risk of my community becoming right-leaning, of course, because I'm very left-leaning, so it'd be like, why would they watch, you know? I'm not like Joe Rogan or something. I don't have like this big gulf of like centrists in the middle that could be radicalized by alt-right people in my chat, you know? That's not really a possibility. But it is still something to, you know, keep in mind.
Yeah, I feel like it's almost like that feeling of like, you know, having like that cool uncle randomly like, you know, get on your ass about something because you did something wrong. It's like that feeling like, you know, you messed up, but you look up to them, and it's tough for you to you know, make sure they don't do it again, but also have them like look up to you and stuff.
Oh, you say that.
Like,
I love shouting in my chat. It makes me feel great. So it's it hurts them far more than it hurts me, you know.
Also, so how does it feel like that? I mean, you talk about chat a lot and stuff. How does it feel that like thousands of people watch you constantly and look up to you, and they feel like they have a sense of relationship with you, even though like they might not even have a personal connection, but thousands of people just look up to you so much? How do you feel about that?
It's something that I try to discourage for the most part, but I also recognize that parasocial relationships need to be weaponized to be most useful. For example, I get a lot of hate online by a lot of fucking crazies, you know? Now, most fans of mine are going to see this and think, oh, that's crazy, and not have their opinion of me changed. But other people who aren't fans of mine might see that and be more persuaded. So it's to my benefit that my fans feel an interest in defending me online, which they're more likely to do if they have sort of like a weird investment in my well-being. I want my chat to have an investment in my well-being. I want my chat to defend me when they feel I'm being treated unfairly. But I don't want them to think that I have a relationship with them. That defense from them of me isn't them protecting a friend, because I'm not their friend. It's them defending ideas and a person who they think holds value. I can defend, for example, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez or Bernie Sanders without believing erroneously that they are my friend. In fact, I do, and I have, and many people in the chat have as well. And I think that's fine and healthy. If people are to defend me, I want them to do it for the right reasons, not because they think I'm their friend. I do sometimes get emails from people who treat me with a degree of familiarity that I'm not comfortable with. I don't mean like they send me nudes or whatever. I mean like they'll tell me about like their day, and they'll ask me for advice on like a personal problem. And like, dude, I don't fucking know. I'm a fucking 26-year-old, okay? I am so at this point sheltered from the problems that my audience has. There are so many people like watching. The idea of me being able to take my time out to like directly address one individual's problems, it's impossible. But I don't want to let these people down and make them feel bad. I usually give them kind of a cursory answer, but it is an issue. It's never going to stop being an issue either. What most people do at my size, by the way, is they get a secretary to filter their emails. That's what most people do. I know Destiny does that, or I don't know if he would call it a secretary, but somebody filters the emails. I don't. I see every email that I get, so eventually that might have to be done, but I do like being able to see every email.
Yeah, I think that same logic, like Elon Musk, for example, people look up to him, but he's just a person too, and a bad person at that too.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, people are fucking crazy for Elon. People have a fucking crazy relationship with Elon Musk. There are a lot of wannabe tech moguls out there who think that by buying a Tesla and keeping up with the stonks and buying Bitcoin, they're going to turn into the next big thing. It's really, really sad seeing the aesthetic of futurism, aesthetic and political tendency, which generally criticizes the ultra-wealthy, being used to justify a parasocial relationship with one of the wealthiest people on the planet as he, like, rapes what's left of it. It's really fucking weird.
Yeah, no, I agree. Switching topics a little bit, how do you regulate your platform in a way to openly discuss ideas without platforming intolerance? So, like, where do you draw the line, basically?
You mean with the people that I have on my stream?
Right, like the people on the right who you want to debate them but not give them much attention. I know there was, I forget his name right now, but that one commie who like you decide to not debate him. I forget exactly what, but where do you draw the line though?
Yeah, I generally try to get a feeling for how much I feel like their platform could benefit from talking to me. That's the main thing that I'm concerned about. There's no individual that I'm afraid of talking to because, again, these people are fucking pathetic. It's mostly a matter of, because at this point, hating me is a brand. The online right knows who I am. Like, there's no ambiguity in that respect. They know who I am. And somebody's saying, dude, I'm going to be talking to Vaush soon. And drums up, get a bunch of attention from that. Well, it would be like... to a lesser extent, of course, but it would be like a lefty getting the opportunity to debate like Ben Shapiro, or more accurately, I think Sargon, because Sargon actually does do debates with a lot of smaller lefties. Credit where credit's due. In large part, I imagine, because the poor blighter doesn't know when he's been owned, but you get a lot of notoriety from that, and I think at this point, my reputation is such that a person could conceivably get an enormous amount of clout just from weaponizing or exploiting their very brief interaction with me. I try to avoid debates with people like that. But if they're very small and I don't feel they could build a platform off of it, I tend not to mind. If they're very large, then obviously there's no risk of platforming them because they're larger than me. People aren't going to just hear about them all of a sudden because of an interaction with me. When it comes to like platforming ideas responsibly, there are no ideas I think that I would lose in discussing, so I'm not that worried about that. Not with a conservative of all people. With the possible exception of conspiracy. If you are confident enough and a conspiratorial type of person, you can make almost anything sound convincing. There are some people out there who, holy shit, I suck at this game. Jesus fuck. There are some people out there who are very, very good at drawing these very compelling implied conclusions from a flurry of data they throw out there that some of which is accurate, some of which isn't, and dealing with that on the spot live is almost impossible. That stuff I tend to be a little trepidatious about, but if you give me enough time on the topic, I'd be confident with that too.
Yeah, it's like the Simpsons thing. They predict the future, but they also got a thousand other things wrong.
Exactly, and you only need, for these people, you only need to be right on one thing, too, for them to win as well. If they say 99 bullshit things that are easily factually debunked, but then they end up getting 1 point over on you, they'll gloat about it like a fucking child for the rest of the discussion. I've had a couple of debates like that where they're like wrong, and then they get one thing right, and they're like, "Ha! You didn't even know that? You fucking idiot!" These people are very obnoxious, and obnoxiousness is sometimes an effective debate tactic, but you got to handle it in a case-by-case basis.
Do you think that there is a purpose for people who disagree with you online? Obviously, you can sway people over to the side, but let's say hypothetically everybody thought the same as you. Would that be better? I mean, obviously the world would be better, hopefully. But is there a purpose for disagreement? Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, my views on issues have changed massively since I started streaming. Not my general perspective or framework or anything like that, but engagements with people who disagree with me have always been valuable. I would never deny that. I would like it if people, maybe everyone, had similar views to me. I think that would definitely be preferable. Like less neo-Nazis, for example. That would be a positive change. But apart from that, no, I like the ideological diversity, and I think it's important that ideological diversity be challenged through natural means, such that their ideas are challenged. You can convince them through superior argumentation or just by bullying them. This is preferable to me than the idea of just snapping my fingers and changing the world in that way.
Yeah. You talked about how you've got your mind changed before. What example? I know there's probably been multiple times. I think the land back issue, and then also guns, maybe. What was one example that stands out specifically for you?
Guns. My position on guns and violent revolution. Do I like apple pie? No, I don't like apple pie, honey. My position on guns and violent revolution have changed a lot. It might be to the point now where I'm actually almost not in favor, not of political pacifism, but of resisting temptation towards violence at all costs. I've been looking at a lot of data, a lot of data, and the evidence for non-violent revolutions being more effective than violent revolutions is actually extremely extensive and compelling. But it feels really good to be the super violent revolutionary. And of course, if things turn to violence, you should always use violence to defend yourself. Always. I'm not arguing that we should, that lefties should turn the other cheek. When it gets down to it, that's what you have to do. But when it comes to maintaining the standard of discourse, nonviolence seems to be factually more effective, even in repressive regimes. So not just in lib democracy America or whatever, but even in violent countries where they will just gun down protesters. Even in those countries, it seems to be more effective. And I didn't get into being a lefty for the fucking clout aesthetic. If I wanted to just get maximum clout with no ethical standard whatsoever, then I would just be like a Bernier Buster who just LARPs about violent revolution every day while giving no real solutions to any problems that'll ever actually happen. But I'm not like that. I do want us to win, and for that reason, my position is always going to be that which I think is most effective. And if that ends up changing, then fuck it, and that's the position I'll adopt. I'll defend it to people who argue with me. I'm sorry. There was one thing in particular that really frustrated me. Somebody on BreadTube posted a link to a YouTube video I uploaded where I was talking about Antifa with some guy who came on, and there was a person in there who said that it was lib of me to say that it was a good thing for a bodyguard who was present at one of these protests to take away a gun that had been seized by a protester. there was this viral clip that went around of a protester who pulled a gun from a car during like the Seattle protests, and then a bodyguard ran up and took the gun away from him. And this is great. Listen, if you've ever actually been to a protest, if you're not a LARPing piece of shit who decides the weight of other people's lives based on what you fucking jerk off to while listening to Chapo Trap House, then you know the last thing you want if you're standing amongst hundreds of other people is for one of you to have a fucking gun. Okay? If one of you has an open rifle just being held out there, the chances of you people getting gunned down fucking massively skyrockets. It looks bad in the media. The pictures make it look like you're a bunch of thugs. It gives the police a greater incentive to initiate violence against you. It means far-right militia groups are far more likely to attack you and then get off afterwards. In every standard, as a broader protest, you do not want to be carrying. But there was one person there who was like, this is liberal. Yeah, you should be arming the proletariat, arm the homeless, and all these other vapid platitudes that don't actually mean anything when it comes to the specific reality of the situation. That shit really, really, really frustrates me. It's also, by the way, a form of political correctness. Lefties who get super fucking triggered when you suggest there are better solutions than what, like, the first thing you'd read on r/communism on Reddit could possibly be. People who get upset when you don't give like the default stereotype lefty like armed revolution answer. That's a form of political correctness. They code switch. They default to an expectation that you should performatively demonstrate an interest in ineffective types of protest. It's very frustrating for me, you know? I expected much better from the online left before I got involved in it, but hey, what are you gonna do?
With that topic of political correctness, what are your? I know you've talked about that a little bit. How like sometimes it's useful, sometimes it's not. Could you go deeper into that a little bit?
Could talk about? Wait, what was the subject?
Like the political correctness. Like it's is it useful? Is it good? I mean, I'm not too informed in that topic as well, but I know you've talked about it a little bit about how there are some benefits and some downfalls to it.
I mean, it depends on what you mean by political correctness. When George Carlin did his famous skit on political correctness back in the day, he was talking about stifling business bureaucratic language, you know, or military language, you know, where you call slaughtering innocents as civilian casualties, you know, that sort of stuff. His talk of political correctness was an indictment of, you know, sort of 1980s and 1990s era dishonesty through marketable language. When people talk about political correctness nowadays, they tend to mean like being nice to people. To which my answer is, yeah, you should be nice to people, of course. I don't think it's a matter of political correctness to call a trans woman a woman. It's just a matter of adhering to the current medical, scientific, and philosophical, you know, consensus on the matter. You wouldn't call it political correctness to insist that a person call the sky blue, would you? You would just say like, yeah, well, that's what it fucking is, you know? You can be dumb about it if you want, but being dumb about it's not political incorrectness. You're just being dumb about it. I generally tend to be against political correctness because I side with Carlin in my framing of it as a product of obscuring meaning through semantics, which is obviously something I'm not in favor of.
Awesome. Going back to like getting people's like opinion changed, you've gotten yours changed multiple times. Obviously, it depends. Like your strategies and rhetoric has changed, or it changes depending on like if you're trying to debate somebody who, you know, like you get your opinion changed based on facts and logic. Most other people, especially on the right, aren't like that. How do you change? Like, what is the best way you feel to change people's minds? And obviously, it depends on the person. But what way, like in general, or for like subgroups of people, is the best way to get people's minds changed?
Very few people have their minds changed through new data being presented to them. That's actually quite rare. That's not an indictment of people in general. It's just you have to understand the human brain is not designed to interpret information in that way. The human brain, evolutionarily, is designed to interpret immediate spatial information and long-term strategic information in a way to maximize its survival. Esoteric political discussion is not something our brains are made for, so the idea that it takes people a little while to wrap their heads around it is totally understandable. I do the same damn thing. I'm not faulting people for it. Most people change their mind. Now, I do change my mind through a change in available evidentiary, arguments, because it's my job to. I hold myself to that standard. Most people aren't going to be like that, and again, that's fine, you know. Not everyone's a professional athlete. I'm not a professional athlete. I'm sure they hold themselves to different standards as well. When it comes to changing people's minds, you usually do it through two ways. You do it through empathy or through strength. Empathy is generally libs. With libs, generally, the way you appeal to them is by showcasing the hardships of the world and what needs to be done to change those hardships and make the world better. That's generally the way to do it. Not all of them can be convinced that way, but it's a good general strategy. A lot of libs are the way they are because they genuinely believe there's no better way to orient the world than the way the world is currently oriented. They are, of course, wrong, but that's my job, to show them that. With conservatives, it tends to be more about strength. You have to demonstrate to them that the people from whom they take their ideas are weaklings who are easily tossed aside if you demonstrate a superior mastery of a subject or something to that effect. That's generally how it goes with those types. That's certainly what I've noticed when I argue with Nazi types as well. It's not about having the better argument. It's about frustrating and disconcerting their opposition to the point where they look weak and childlike, probably because that's the strategy they tend to use with other people. I think it tends to fall along the line of people who believe hierarchy is a good thing inherently and people who believe hierarchy is a bad thing inherently. And that's like a really critical distinction when it comes to hold on, I'm going to move my camera. Why is my camera up in this corner? Wouldn't it just look better down here? I'm just going to try it down here. I feel like there we go. I feel like people generally either want or do not want hierarchy, just as a general rule, and that will determine the response they have to different types of argumentative strategies.
With that hierarchy thing, a lot of people that I've talked to, they will say that they are against hierarchy, but everything they stand for goes that they like hierarchy. Is that something that is common, do you think, that people are unwilling to notice their true beliefs?
Yeah, sure. I mean, how many racists say they're racist, right? That's pretty uncommon, Most people say, oh, yeah, I hate racism. Racism's bad, but these thugs in the inner city need to pull their pants up and fucking stop smoking crack, or, of course the police are going to have to beat their shit in, Oh, yeah, I'm not racist, but these fucking whores need to close their legs because these black mamas keep humping a bit. They'll say fucking anything after the I'm not racist, but, that's the whole joke, right? Like, saying I'm not racist, but is like an invitation to the worst opinions imaginable. But you should treat that the same way, with the hierarchy thing. Like, I'm not in favor of hierarchy, I'm just pro-police, pro-state, pro-far-right militias killing people in the street. Like, it's holding people to their hypocrisy is very rarely effective. People usually don't care that they're hypocritical. People will very often hold two beliefs in their head simultaneously, which are incompatible. The Orwellian doublethink. This is a very common, thing. Some people do the triple think. People can do all sorts of wacky things with their brains. It's not about pointing out that they're hypocritical. That doesn't change anyone's minds. It's just about holding them to a position so aggressively that they have to either double down on it and change how they think of themselves, or they have to reconsider that position.
Awesome. What are a little bit changed again? What are some different tips you have for maybe some people like me, people in the audience, that if they don't want to be someone like you, political commentator or politician, or someone actively involved in politics, what do you think? What tips do you have that they can do to apply their knowledge and political views in practice to help change other people's minds and help the movement forward?
I have a video on praxis that I think contains most of my thoughts in this matter, but the most important one is live a good life. I think a lot of lefties get obsessed with this idea that they need to turn themselves into some sort of theory-munching, Superman. I think this is ridiculous. Most people's lives are hard enough as it is without them taking the burdens on the world upon their own shoulders. What this invariably leads to is burnout. People get super-duper emotionally invested in being extra good activists, and then invariably, because life is hard, they burn out and they start to feel shit about themselves, and they distance themselves from politics entirely because they emotionally associate it with feelings of withdrawal and despair. That's not generally a good strategy. People should do things that make them feel good, as long as those things don't hurt other people and are generally good for yourself. And that's what I prioritize first when I talk about other people. I'm playing a video game stream right now because it makes me happy to play video games with people watching. If I wanted to maximize growth, I could have done a politics stream today, gotten 12,000 concurrent viewers, made $1,500, and probably upped my subs by a good bit. But doing that would have made me less happy than doing this, and over time, if I grow too unhappy, my content is going to get worse. I recognize that my ability to do what I do is predicated largely on good mental health, and that's what I encourage first for everyone who's watching.
Do you think that with your younger audience, you think that that is a bigger fear for you than maybe some other political commentators, just because the younger audience, I'm included in this too, might get too caught up in it, and not have like experience in life to understand that they do need a break. Although like you could, like you said, you could be gaining followers, and I could be, going to debate somebody right now. Do you think that the younger audience might not recognize that and then go down that rabbit hole of, associating politics with something bad? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, yeah, for sure. Zoomers these days are fucking terrifying. Young people these days are so incredibly involved in politics, like to an extraordinary degree, and there's nothing wrong with that if it's done healthily. I just don't know if it necessarily is. How many cringy-ass teenagers are there out there, let's be real, who define themselves almost entirely through, like, political compass memes? Like, haha, that's very lib-left of you. I listen, I haven't been on the inside of the high school in nearly 10 years now. I know for a fact, just from engaging with my chat and with my younger brother and all that crap, that... Fuck, I messed that up. That there are a lot of people in high school and middle school who are getting invested in politics to an aesthetic sense. And that's not necessarily good. Politics shouldn't be considered aesthetic. Politics is aesthetic, but if you start treating it aesthetically, you wind up in some really bad positions politically. Really, really, really bad ones. Fascism is, after all, predicated on the worship of political aestheticization. But moreover than that, so are most forms of authoritarianism, the glorification of a very hyper-specific, very dogmatic set of political beliefs that are based more in memes than in reality. You could do that from today, fucking how people behave on Reddit, all the way over to Nazi Germany. It's about taking complex ideas and boiling them down into a very distinct and very easily digestible set of mimetic values that are easy to weaponize against other people. And that's what I worry about with the young people, But maybe they'll be fine. Who the fuck knows?
Who knows? Awesome. Well, I think there's like one last question. I'll let you get going back to your video game stream here. Given that like you were able to rise to prominence so quickly, like within your YouTube channel, especially recently, and you've been really successful at your job, and 6-figure salary, like you said, what's one piece of advice that you would give to somebody, not necessarily looking for a life in politics, but just in general for someone with a long-term goal in life? Because you've been able to you knew from the beginning that you wanted to make change and stuff, and you made it happen. I'm sure there's a big aspect of luck in there, but what's one advice that you have for somebody who wants to who has a long-term goal in life and wants to get that done?
Yeah, sure. There are two main ones. One of them is relevant to my life, and you are correct in that I was very lucky, by the way. So this is by no means like holistic, but there are two main pieces of advice. Actually, three. Thank you, Hyena. The first one is networking. Nobody ever, ever, ever rises to prominence exclusively through individual merit. I only am where I am, personally, because I was able to exploit a prominence that I had within Destiny's community. And because I had friends in Destiny's community and people who liked me and people who were willing to support me. Having friends, or at least having compatriots, allies, whatever, is absolutely necessary in every facet of any type of success, even for wonky political or personal ventures that you think wouldn't necessarily entail that sort of thing. The second one is learn how to delay gratification. There are a lot of people who are just not good at that, who just don't seem to be very willing to recognize the distinction between immediate desires and long-term goals. And the third one is be willing to cut toxic people out of your life. This wasn't relevant to me because I have good people in my life, generally speaking, but there are a lot of people who I feel like are so held back by shitty family members and shitty friends, and they never do anything about it, and then that's their entire life, It's actually really, really, really sad. So I would encourage people to, if at all possible, avoid putting themselves in that position. The temporary pain of losing a toxic family member or friend is nothing compared to the lifelong regret of saddling yourself to somebody who's not compatible with you.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. It was a pleasure talking to you, and thank you again for letting me on your stream.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. I really appreciate it. And good luck with the thing.
Of course, of course. Can I get one little shout out?
Yeah.
Just my brother, he got me into politics, and he got me into you too, so I appreciate him. And then also trans rights.
Trans rights, comrade. Do you love black people?
I love black people.
Good. Good to hear it. Have a good one.
You too.
All right, peace.